there's something more than what we've been handed, we've been crawling in the dark, looking for the answer. This is the Community Solutions Podcast, and you know what? We have been crawling around in the dark, because sometimes that's what it's like with some of these websites, to find financial information, to find the proposed budgets, to find the comprehensive plans. Sometimes that's what it's like, trying to find who contributed to whose campaign, because the campaign reports are not always there. I tell you, we do stop only when we find the answer. With me, Jason Bradley, is Andrew Richter.
Yeah, and Jay, you mentioned the dark. I used to be afraid of the dark, and you know what I realized?
What?
I wasn't so brave in the light, neither. So it's okay.
I'd say we've taken some steps of bravery in the past 10 years that a lot of people haven't, and but I'm finding, and this is exciting, that more and more people, as we spread the word, are standing up, and they're getting involved earlier.
We've invented a new word. Is braver a word?
Braver, I think so.
We are
more brave.
Yeah, we're getting more braver than every day that goes by. We're getting more braver. We've even created a new word. We got a new word.
Yeah. Look at that.
5,001 now words to the call up Webster's and tell them that we've, added braver.
Sure. And that's just kind of the service that we are. We give you all the local news and information. We give you all the concepts. We tell you where it all comes from. And we give you new vocabulary while we're at it, just to boot, because we're those kind of guys. How are you?
Oh, couldn't be better.
Feels like it's been a week.
Yeah. As they say in North Dakota, put near.
Yeah, pert near. Pert near a week.
Yeah,
I was up north and cutting the wood in North Dakota. So
now let me tell you. Then let me just say this. Okay. Now I don't think. Look, I saw the movie Fargo. Okay. I still defy that we do not talk like that. Now it gets closer to the border. It gets a little more Canadian.
Oh boy.
They talk about things. I mean,
there's some of that.
But I mean, it was.
There's some. I'm telling you, when you get Duluth and North, there's a little bit of that up there. There's a little bit of that.
You do hear the A. I definitely hear that.
And the O.
And the Oli jokes. Yeah, I know. But I still dispute that it's that blatant as you saw on the movie Fargo.
Well, I think it's less than it used to be. But I mean, look at down south. I mean, you can go down south, and I don't know what the percentage is, but a lot more people have a Midwestern accent than I would say a Southern accent. At least a lot more than what used to be.
Depends where you are,
yeah.
But I would agree.
Yeah.
I think the further down south you go into Georgia, into Mississippi, Texas, I think, has its own, kind of like North Dakotian. There's another language, North Dakotian.
Yeah.
I think Texas does have a little bit of it. Texas has a lot of things to itself.
Absolutely.
And I think a language is a bit kind of you can add. So there's a lot of variations to English. I mean, there's British English, there's Australian English, there's Canadian English. There's a lot of different ways people speak that language. Let's put it that way.
That's true, and you see that in a lot of things as you go across the country. That you notice that there are a lot of different ways to do things.
Right, like go try ordering a honey vice out in California. Okay,
right.
They've never heard of Leinenkugels. Totally different.
But yet, you could pick up a comp plan in Minnesota, California, Florida, Maine, and Kansas, and you will find the same things.
Right. You might pronounce it differently.
You might. There might be a little different terminology.
It might be a roundabout rather than a roundabout.
Or
but you will see them.
What do they call it? What we say in our other podcast? Like a circle drive or there are different names.
It's different way to say the same thing.
Yeah.
It's no different than creating a new government program that does the same thing and giving it a different name.
It's true.
So
it is all true. Well, I want to introduce something that I don't know if this will be a part of every podcast, but I think that we hear things from time to time, and sometimes they come in clumps, and sometimes we get them in onesies and twosies. But I think that it is very important for us to keep an eye on a lot of these things that we hear about. Sometimes it's enough for us to make a whole show out of, and we have definitely done that. But there are other times where maybe it deserves 5 minutes of our time. And so we want to be somebody that you can turn to hear this stuff, because it's happening in your city too. So we'd like to call this segment, drumroll, the local lowdown.
Oh, wow. L squared.
Yes. The local lowdown. That has a good ring to it.
I think so.
So
we ought to that should be our intellectual property. We ought to brand that.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Oh, well,
we got some good stuff on the local lowdown. Now, Jay, let me throw something out here. I want to start in Anoka County.
Okay.
We'll just spend a few minutes on this. Anoka County has the old North Star commuter rail running through it.
Our favorite, yes.
Of course, it runs all the way to Big Lake, all the way to Sherburne County. It's not just an Anoka County thing. Anoka County just announced. Now, back up a minute. I want to ask the public transit advocate something. If you think North Star has been a success, then I want you to define for me what can fail. What is the definition of a failure? If North Star has a success, what then could possibly fail?
Tax cuts.
Oh, well, of course that could fail. I mean, we have a system where the top 10% are paying 70% of the country's taxes, but they're not paying their fair share. Anyway, listen to this. There's an article in the Star Tribune. This is from September 23rd, so we're going back a little bit. But North Star has gotten a congestion mitigation air quality grant. But they're lining up for that.
Yes.
To offer shuttle service at the Fridley stop on the North Star commuter rail.
Wow.
This is quote unquote, I love this part, it's quote unquote free.
Really?
Now, the grant's for $250,000. It's going to run for 1 year. And it's, quote, free. Now, Jay, you and I both know there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask, who's paying for the shuttles? Who's paying for the maintenance on the shuttles? Who's paying for the gas that goes in the shuttles?
Apparently, it's this federal grant for $240,000.
So this grant never runs out? Like, from here until the rapture, we're going to, if you believe in that. Well, I'm just saying that they're going to pay for the maintenance. They're going to pay for the gas. They're going to pay for the new vehicles.
I'm not sure, but it sounds like it's a one-time, 1 year thing. Here is County Commissioner Jim Kordiak. Quote, it's the last mile piece. When you get to the train station, you could still be several miles from your destination. Well, no kidding, buddy. This is exactly why rail service doesn't work. It's not like a road. You can take a car pretty much anywhere.
Right.
You can't take a train anywhere.
No.
So this guy's just figured this out. This is an Anoka County commissioner responsible. There's 7 of them responsible for tens of millions of dollars. And this guy's finally had a light bulb go on in his head that rail can't be everywhere. Now, the public subsidy per passenger is $17.76 just to ride North Star. And it will be more because this shuttle will cost the rider nothing. But of course, and remember, this is a federal grant, meaning my tax dollars went to Washington. They paid for their administration and everybody in the FTA and all of that. Then you have to go beg for your money back, which is not free. It's not free to apply for a grant.
Oh no!
You have to come up with a plan. It takes staff hours. Then $240,000 is filtered back to fund something that 100 people in Anoka County are going to use.
Right.
So this is, what is this? This is not working. So what are we going to do? They've already tried cutting the fares, which just means the taxpayers are covering more of it.
Right.
They've tried to actually decrease the times because it makes them run on time more. They were having a problem. Of course, they do share with freight rail. I mean, that may be an issue too. But it's this whole thing has been a joke. It's been ill-conceived. It's been absurd.
Well, and we're thinking about this. So Anoka County gets the grant. And I would say that 90% of the people that take light rail start either in Anoka County or in Sherburne County and take it all the way down into Hennepin County, downtown Minneapolis.
Some. I'm really not sure how they quantify that data. I don't know how many people in Big Lake work in Minneapolis. I mean,
well, quite a few. I mean,
it could be.
But, I mean, also you're looking at, okay, so people might get on and off along the way. Someone might take it from Big Lake to Fridley or whatever. But, it's still, I think, an issue because you're having people come from, not only are you funding the shuttle service then for people in Anoka County, I guess, who want to get to and from light rail station or the North Star stations, but you're also funding, I would assume, people from Sherburne County and Hennepin County that take it to Anoka County and then want to get to where they're going when they get off the train.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Anoka County, you're funding, you're giving so generously to people from Sherburne County and Hennepin County. That's nice. That's good.
And keep in mind, Sherburne County is not under Met Council jurisdiction, which is another interesting aspect to that. Now, you want to take a little step back into our favorite city?
Our favorite one?
Well, I'm not talking about Crystal.
Oh, our other favorite.
Our other favorite. It's neighbor to the west.
Yes.
No Hope.
Yes.
No Hope. Again, I'm going back a little bit.
Okay.
September 25th. You remember about a month or two ago, we did a New Hope show where we talked about organized garbage hauling and how they were going to consider that.
Yes, which means they want to do it.
Right. I mean, they completely want to do it. I think there may be one dissent, but I think overall they want to do this.
Yeah.
Guess what they did September 25th at their meeting?
They cowered in fear?
No, that would be okay.
Okay.
But they did not. They punted.
They punted. Okay.
They decided they're going to, quote, do more research and then make a decision, which, let me translate that. That means the public's not behind us, so we're going to go create some more propaganda so the public will be behind us. That's pretty much what they're doing. Now, if you listen to the comments made by the city council members, you can clearly see that they want to do this and they're ticked off. They're not serving the public.
Right.
They're trying to manipulate what people think. Eric Lamley, who has never cast a negative vote, he's a total robot up there. Whatever city staff wants, whatever raises people get, he just is an automatic yes vote. Said that he has never supported a single hauler system until now.
Oh.
Magically, he's changed his mind. One thing that brought me, I'm quoting him, from a no vote to a yes vote was the way haulers presented misinformation. These folks sent out flyers with misinformation. Well, Mr. Lamley, what misinformation was that? Did they just print things you don't like? These people are going to lose their business.
Yes.
You are forcing them out of the city. They're coming to the table saying, wait a second, this is our livelihood here, and you're trying to end it. Mm-hmm. And you have the gall to sit there on your little soapbox and criticize them for it? Why don't you go do your job?
Yeah.
Why don't you do that?
Yet, why don't you try and do their job for a day, put yourself in their shoes, and see, I think it'd open your eyes a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and it just continued and continued and continued. Andy Hoff, I guess, was awake for this meeting, and he wanted... I'm trying to find the quote here, but it was something about, wanting to do more research. You people don't want to do research. You're going to go. Here's what they're going to do. They're going to go back to the drawing board, and they're going to come up with, okay, how do we sell this? How do we sell this so people are going to buy it? Kathy Hempkin has indicated she's a yes vote. John Elder will vote yes, no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. He's another one that just votes for whatever. Jonathan London's vote's up in the air. But I think it's pretty clear that this is coming when they think it is politically palatable.
Yes.
And it's not right now.
I don't know that it ever will be, but the chances of them catching a city asleep, hey, we fought it off, we can go back to sleep, that's what you got to watch.
Prediction.
Yes.
It happens after the November 2018 elections, but before the January swearing in.
Absolutely. And I would go a step further. If there are some upsets on the council, especially look for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Where have we seen that before? Oh, Crystal.
What a great segue.
October 3rd. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but old Johnny B.
Oh, Johnny B.
Our favorite. I tell you, it's like Renee. He's as in love with me as she is. One thing Crystal's doing, we'll go through this quick. But
okay.
One thing they're doing is talking about the budget and allowing for public comment. Before they actually vote on it.
A city does that?
Yeah, a totally new concept.
Wow.
So October 3rd, they had a little presentation from the finance person who's not a city employee anymore.
That's fantastic.
Contracted out. About the budget. One of the big things going on is they're still in the transition phase from getting away from assessments. And the new mill and overlay projects that follow the assessments are not going to be paid for by assessing.
Wow.
They're not going to borrow the money. You're not going to open the mail and have a sticker shock.
No longer you're paying interest.
No longer paying. It's no longer $4 to the project, $1 to the banker.
Nice.
Johnny B at the October, and you don't even bother going back and watching. It was just funny back and forth. If you do, just don't take it so seriously. Kept saying that was taxing people twice. Now, let me ask you something.
Okay.
Now, you're still a Crystal resident. I'm not. If you are, and you've just gone through the process this year, right?
Yes.
You're the last phase.
Yes.
You got your sticker shock.
I just did a couple weeks ago.
Now, the next is going to come out of the property taxes, not a special assessment. So when they do the mill and overlay in 15 years, that they're doing right now on the first ones that they did back in the 90s.
Right.
It's designed to make the road last longer and give it a little touch-up. We're now paying cash for that.
Wow.
So how is that a double taxation? You're either paying it through your regular taxes, or you're paying a second assessment with interest.
Right. That's a tough one. Do I want to pay with interest, or do I want to pay incrementally without interest? That didn't take very long to decide. I'll take without interest. Thank you.
Yeah, but I mean, the council kept asking Budashevsky.
Right.
So what are you proposing to do? I think Jeff Kolb asked him 3 times. Budashevsky had no answer. He was just out there whining.
Right.
And we're like, okay, well, so what do you propose to do? Yeah, no answer.
Right.
It was just bull hard. And it's just funny watching somebody like Budashevsky when his buddies aren't on the council anymore. Things are, I don't want to say progressing because I don't like that word, but things in Crystal, I mean, these folks who are in the majority campaigned on this. They promised this. They are delivering on this.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, imagine that. People actually doing what they say that they're going to do once they're elected.
And by the way, the preliminary stuff, he voted for it. If you're opposed to it, why are you? I mean, I don't know. It's good fun, my friends, to tune in once in a while and watch the meetings. It's just very funny.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage you to do it, but don't take it too seriously.
No. Crystal is still doing the right thing up there, so that's good.
Absolutely. No question about it.
All right. Well, just one moment, and we're going to have Governor Hopeful, Hennepin County Commissioner Jeff Johnson on the phone with us, and that's going to be a killer interview. You won't want to miss it. We'll be right back.
Psst. Hey, this since there's a break in the action, I thought I'd get your attention for just a moment. You know, one of the questions that we get asked the most when we're out giving keynotes, talking to groups of people just like you all over the state of Minnesota, is how do we get our people engaged? That's a huge problem because we focus so much on the state races, on the federal races, and we don't hear a lot about the local races. Well, the best thing that you can do right now, step number one, is to start sharing the content that we put out. We put that out there for you guys so that you can turn people on to what's happening at the local level across the state. Nobody else is doing this. It's just us. So, we're out there on Facebook. We're out there on Twitter. We're out there on Instagram. And we put that stuff out there so that you can share it and look like the local hero where you live, so that you can share it with your friends, your neighbors, so that you can share it with your community and they can begin to understand and put the pieces together. And that's not going to make us look amazing. That's going to make you look amazing because you're the one delivering the goods. So go out and like and share because it's only going to do good for you and your community. We make that available for you because we want you to be able to take control of the out-of-control government that is doing the same thing no matter where we live. So, our web address, COMMsolutionsMN.com. From there, you can find us. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, it's all out there. So, thank you guys so much for all that you do, and we're going to go back to the program.
Welcome back. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter.
Always a sunny day in my world, Jay.
Yes, it is. All right. As promised, on the phone with us, we have Hennepin County Commissioner and candidate for the governorship of Minnesota, Mr. Jeff Johnson. Jeff, how are you?
I am doing great. How are you guys?
Oh, fantastic.
Yep, we're good. How are things out on the campaign trail?
You know, it's they're going really well, and it's really busy. I actually have something to compare this to because I did it 4 years ago, and this race has started so much faster than the last one did. Whether it is the number of events that are happening or the number, the interest of just average people in the race. Or fundraising, everything is just at a much stepped-up pace. I think that's because it's an open seat and is more of a toss-up race than the last one was. So that's very encouraging.
Oh, that's great to hear. I mean,
hey, caucus in a couple months, right? Yeah. It's not that far away.
No, you're right. It isn't that far away. That's true.
Wow. So, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about, you just told us a little bit about how things are going out on the trail, but a little bit about yourself. I know being in Hennepin County, sometimes what we hear, we're more familiar with what's going on. But as far as just who you are and kind of why you're running, all that kind of stuff, let us get to know you a little better.
Sure. So, background information, I actually grew up in northern Minnesota. I'm from Detroit Lakes. My wife is from Crookston, and we went to school up in Moorhead. So, essentially, the first half of our lives were in northwestern Minnesota. I spent a few years away at law school out east, and then we got married and lived in Chicago for a couple years. And now we've been in the Twin Cities for 22 years, probably essentially the second half of our lives. We got 2 teenage boys. One is in college, one's in high school. I have been self-employed for the last 16 years. I was a labor and employment lawyer for Cargill and a couple law firms prior to going out on my own. And then in 2000, I went out on my own, and I've been doing that ever since. During that time, I served 6 years in the Minnesota House, representing Plymouth and points west around the lake. And now the last 8.5 years, I guess, I have been on the Hennepin County Board. There's 7 of us on the board. I represent western and northwestern Hennepin County as the often lonely voice, I would argue, of fiscal sanity on that board. It's somewhat left-leaning. And that's part of the challenge and part of the fun is to know that your colleagues don't really agree with your worldview about government and still figure out whether there are ways you could change things. So that's it's been a good place to be. And I'm running for governor, as you mentioned, and got in about 6 months ago. And I'm really running for a pretty straightforward reason, pretty simple reason, and that is to take power away from state government in this case and give it back to people. And I can give you a lot of different examples of that if you want to go that direction, but that is really the basis of where I'm coming from as a candidate.
Good. That's a good direction to go in. Now, I have to say this, too. Now, Jeff, you know this now, that you're now my county commissioner.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
and
right.
you know how long I was stuck in District 1 with Jason. Okay,
so which begs the question: how is my buddy Mike Opat over there? He's ever since he told me that my ability to make stupid decisions ended the moment I stepped foot on their property, I just haven't gone. So.
Yeah, I assume you're referring to smoking on county property.
Well, I don't smoke, but I make plenty.
Pretty much.
I don't smoke, but I make plenty of other stupid decisions, so I've just kind of steered clear.
I will tell you this, that OPAT is with me more often than any other member. He's not with me very often, but he's usually 6-1. But when it's 5-2, it's almost always Mike with me, because he's definitely a Democrat and he's liberal, but he also gets kind of annoyed with some of the really silly progressive stuff that we're seeing. So every once in a while, he's actually an ally.
Yeah, and
so you got the second best.
Jeff, the last time I talked to Mike Opat, I actually thanked him for voting against the wheelage tax.
Yeah.
You remember that a couple years back? No, I just want to throw something out here. Just real quick, the wheelage tax, because I just paid my tabs yesterday on my truck. It was $10 of it was the wheelage tax. Now, can you explain real quick what that is exactly?
Sure. It is a tax on every vehicle in the county, and every county was given the ability, the power to do that by the state legislature a few years ago. You can only spend it on transportation, which includes transit.
Yeah,
and
I was going to say that's a broad definition now.
That's right, and it is simply a way for county government to get more money from people. I mean, we're now at a $2.3 billion budget in Hennepin County. That's larger than 10 states, I think. But we still said a couple of years ago that we just, it's so tight. We don't have the money to keep the potholes filled and keep our roads safe, and it's dangerous, and so we need something new. And that's when the wheelage tax passed, and Mike voted against that. So that, there again is a good example.
Yes, if I recall, it was a 4-3 vote, but I could be wrong on that. But I thought there was one other who voted against it.
There might have been. I don't remember, to be honest. There could have been maybe Randy Johnson or Jan Callison voted against it too. I'm not sure, but it did pass, and now it is a given. And it's actually one of the things that annoys me, bothers me the most about Hennepin County and county government, and this is true not just in Hennepin, but it's worse in Hennepin than anywhere else, and that is the fact that we are, no matter how much money we spend, we're always claiming poverty, and it is because we can't prioritize what's most important. And so we give an example of, some of the most vulnerable people are not getting the services they need and deserve, and argue it's because we don't have enough money. And the answer is no, it's because we don't prioritize the most vulnerable people, or we don't prioritize keeping roads or streets safe, and we spend money on everything under the sun and then say we don't have enough of it. And that is very frustrating to me, and it's a great example.
Yeah, Jeff, I want to ask you one more thing about Hennepin County. Then we'll get to the governor campaign and the things you changed from St. Paul, because I really want to get into that. You mentioned the budget to over $2 billion. Now, Hennepin County has a couple different levies, correct me if I'm wrong. They've got a railroad authority and a housing authority that is separate from the budget. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and those are smaller amounts of money, but they tend to get lost in the big levy. The big levy seems to be the only thing anybody talks about. So what are those budgets like, the railroad authority and the housing authority, and Do I dare ask what direction they're going in as far as going up or down?
Well, do you think you don't know what direction they're going in?
Well, it's a 50-50 guess, and I'm 100% sure it's one.
Yeah, you are correct. We actually are going to hold the housing levy flat next year, which has that's kind of cool. So we have a general levy, which is probably around 800, maybe a little over $800 million. Then there's the railroad levy, which is in the $35 million range. So it is a very small in comparison. And then the housing levy is even smaller. It's like $10 or $15 million. And, honestly, people will tell you otherwise. But I believe the reason we do this is exactly why you stated it. We can raise the railroad levy from 32 to 35 million, which we did this year, which is a 10% tax increase. But nobody ever talks about that because it's dwarfed by the general levy, which is only going up, 4% or 5%. And so nobody is keeping track of the fact that the the train levy is going up 10%, or in some years, when I first started, we had a year where we doubled the railroad tax. And the Housing Authority was actually created just 10 years ago, right before I got on the board. And, it was it's a separate levy now so that nobody can really keep track that this one is increasing at leaps and bounds too, even though it's not this year, thankfully. Yeah. And I'm not a fan of separate levies. We should have one big levy and everybody should know exactly how much it's going up every year.
Yeah, and I come to think of it, I remember you coming to the Senate District 45 convention one year, and I think you mentioned you were the person I remember that I didn't know there were. Here I was paying property taxes and didn't know they were going three different places.
Right. Yeah. Well, right. And you don't. You wouldn't know that if you read any Star Tribune article about a tax increase, because they only will tell you about the general levy increase because that's obviously that is the biggest one, but. And just so you know, we set our maximum levy a couple weeks ago, which means the increase can't be any greater than that, but at least in the past, it hasn't been any lower than that either. And that was at 4.95%. Last year's was at about 5%, and the year before that was at about 5%. And each of those years, I've voted against it, but each of those years I've had other colleagues who really wring their hands and say, this is too much. We can't keep up with this. This has to change. I'm going to vote for it this year, but this can't happen again next year. And I expect it will pass 6-1 again this year.
So the preliminary levy is pretty much the final levy for the most part.
It is. There have been years where we've shaved a little bit off of that, and there's a big push this year to do that, so maybe it gets down to 4.6 instead of 4.9. But it's not going to go down to 1 or 2.
Yeah, well, in some worlds, that's a 0.3% cut, right, Jason?
Right, exactly. I would assume as well, Jeff, that not everything is within those three levies. That you also have certain things to do with like bonding and all of that. That they're still taxes, but they happen outside of what's reported in the levies.
Yeah, well, there are lots of fees, which government is always good at. I think that's maybe 20%, 15 to 20% of our funding is fees, which aren't property taxes. But then we also get about 10 to 12% of our budget from the federal government and another 10 to 12% from the state government, which is, we look at, unfortunately, as free money.
Right.
And it's not. It still comes from the taxpayers. It's just spread out a little more broadly. So yes, it's about. The levy itself, or the levies themselves, are they're under half. I think they're maybe even close to 40% of our actual budget. It comes from the levies. So there's a lot of other income.
Wow. So there's a lot of grant writing that happens at the county level then, and I kind of knew that to be true, but I guess I've never been able to put a percentage around it.
Yeah, it's probably. I'd say it's a little over 20% in an average year. The feds during the Obama years, that percentage was a little higher, and I suspect now it'll be a little bit lower, but it's not going to change dramatically. We still rely heavily. And actually part of that is good. At the state level at least, most welfare programs that are funded by the state are administered by counties, and so we call them pass-through dollars. We don't get to decide how to spend them, but we administer them. And I think that system actually makes sense because counties are closer to the people who are receiving these benefits and can do a better job of, monitoring whether they're working or not. I'm not sure we do a particularly good job of that, but we do probably better than the state would at it. And so that is, so I don't necessarily complain about that 20% coming from the state and feds, because I think, we do a better job. Locals do a better job the closer you get to the people.
That's good. Also, I heard that, and I think this is official now, that we're getting out of the CTIB, the County's Transit Improvement Board, and that's going to allow Hennepin County to raise the transit taxes even more. Correct?
And that's already happened.
It's happened. Okay.
I mean, I think it was officially done last week. There was some leftover cake in the lunchroom, so I'm serious.
Okay.
And
well,
they didn't invite me.
Yeah, the CTIB, we saw it as another layer of government that, I just unelected,
And what happened with that was, the CTIB was created, County's Transit Improvement Board. So it was solely an organization of metro counties that were allowed by the legislature to create a sales tax to fund light rail, essentially, and buses, but it was almost all light rail. And that worked fine for the counties and rail advocates for a period of time, until Republicans in the legislature, thankfully, decided they were done funding these huge light rail projects, because the formula is that for these huge projects that are, billions of dollars, the federal government pays for half of them, and then locals pay for a certain percent, and the Met Council pays for a certain percent, and the state legislature, the state budget pays for 10%. And when you're talking about a $2 billion project, that 10% is $200 million, so it matters a lot. And when the state decided that it wasn't going to fund these anymore, namely Southwest and Bottineau, that's when the solution that all the parties agreed to was, well, we'll get rid of CTIB, and we'll allow counties to increase their sales tax even more to cover the state portion. So for those of us who are Hennepin County taxpayers, it's still moving forward. The project's still going forward. It's just we're paying for a bigger percentage of it as property taxpayers now. So that was I can't remember the amount increase, but we're talking about well over $100 million.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Well, let's jump forward here into your run for being the governor of Minnesota. We just identified a ton of local problems. I think local government is under a lot of pressure from governments above them to become cookie cutter cities and do everything the same. I want to get your take. I mean, having served in local government, having served in the legislature, you've seen both sides of this. What are the top priorities that you would change as governor pertaining to local governments, how they're funded, how they're run? Take it in any direction that you want to.
Sure.
What would you do to change the system the way it is?
The biggest trade-off I would make, and this would be a trade-off because locals would love half of it and hate half of it, but there are so many both funded and unfunded mandates that come from state government to local government. Whether you're talking about counties, cities, or school districts, it's really obscene. And it is, in most cases, those mandates aren't necessary, but some interest group has gotten them put in place because it benefits them at the state level. And it is what if you talk to school board members or even teachers, they will, their biggest complaint about the state legislature is not money, although it's a close second. It is, we have no control whatsoever over the money we do get. And so, let's actually act on that rather than just talk about it and start rolling back some of these mandates. The flip side of that is if the locals are going to have more control over how they spend their money and hopefully lose the argument that the state is requiring us to fund all these things and not paying for them, then I think we need to have some control on local property taxes. And this one is really important to me because I see every day in my district people, especially people on fixed incomes, getting taxed out of their homes. They built these homes for their families in the 1950s, 60s, maybe 70s, and they want their grandchildren to be able to enjoy this same home. They're not mansions; they're in many cases modest homes in a nice part of town. and they go on a fixed income, but their property taxes continue to increase 5, 6, 7% year after year after year, and eventually they got to sell the home. They can't afford to stay there anymore through no fault of their own. And the property tax is the least fair tax we have in Minnesota. It doesn't often correlate with your ability to pay more. And so my thought is a cap on property tax increases as they relate to any individual homeowner. In exchange for that, we're going to start rolling back mandates on local governments so they have much more control over what they spend and how they spend it. That would be the biggest piece for me.
So then it also emphasizes you got to elect the right people to local office.
That's right, exactly. And I mean that's a completely separate but really important issue. As a Republican, we do not do a good job at all as Republicans of electing our own people to these nonpartisan offices. Because they're called nonpartisan. In many cases, they're not. But the Democrats are great at it, and they're great at it very covertly because they don't run as Democrats. They, run as concerned parents about this or that or business people, but they're liberal, and it creates not only a farm team for the for candidates for the legislature, but it creates these spending machines that have allowed property taxes to get so out of hand for so many people. So we need to do a much better job of that, and I think we're starting to, but we're nowhere near the DFL level on that one. Let me add another. There's a lot of different issues with respect to your question, but another big one for me, if we're talking about local government, is the Met Council, and it's an issue. It's a problem that I deal with every day on the county board because we work so closely with the Met Council as a county, and that organization is so entirely out of control. I don't believe they can be fixed. I really believe that we have to eliminate them, dismantle them. We have to have some sort of regional authority for certain purposes like the sewer system, and to accept federal transportation dollars, they require us to have something like that, and that's fine. But I don't think we can change or fix the Met Council to serve that purpose. I think we need to eliminate the Met Council and start over with an organization that has very limited legislative power and either doesn't have the right to tax people or consists of elected officials who do have the right to tax people. Because right now they can tax and they're accountable to no one, which is kind of un-American, if you ask me.
You sort of took my question from me. I was actually going to ask if the Met Council could be fixed because everybody on the right seems to, you had the legislative audit that just came out a few weeks ago. I read a story where there's money unaccounted for or something. But, everybody seems to not like it. But I don't hear a lot of, okay, what are we going to do? Where's our legislation? Okay, I realize we have a governor right now who's not going to change it, but, the conversation, I feel, is we don't even win that.
Yeah. Right. I mean, a lot of these changes, I feel, has to happen at the legislative level because they're the ones who enact the statutes signed by the governor in order to increase the power of the Met Council. One question that I would have, and I've been trying to figure this out in my head. You had mentioned putting elected people on the Met Council. Now, would that consist of like legislators, or would that be like completely new elections? Because the thing that I worry about is that a lot of times people who vote might not even know who their county commissioner is, who their city council people are, or definitely who's on a park board, and how would this not be just another uninformed election?
Yeah, and I have the same concern. I mean, it could be directly elected, but my strong preference would be that they are not legislators, but locally elected people. So it'd be populated with city council members and county commissioners from that particular district, and then it would just kind of rotate. So it wouldn't even require new elections. These are people who are already elected and understand local government pretty well, but at least voters could hold them accountable for their taxing decisions. And, the Met Council has power to take property through eminent domain,
right,
but they're accountable to no one but the governor who appointed them. Mm-hmm. And so, the other thing, if we didn't want to go the election route, is simply take away their power to tax then and say that their budget is going to run through the legislature or maybe one of the agencies, so that they no longer have that power if they're not elected officials. And I think either one works fine. The bigger problem than that, though, for me, is the simple fact that they had a purpose that made sense 40, 50 years ago, and that purpose is not just secondary for them. It's about 10th down the list from other things that they have grabbed onto over the years, and in most cases the legislature has given them with respect to housing. And now, their big push has to do with equity. And equity, you might argue that's an important issue, but it's not an issue for a group of appointed officials to decide and then try to dictate to cities and counties what their community looks like based on their idea of utopia. This many poor people and this many of this color skin and this many of that color skin. That's really not anybody's business except the people who live in that city.
Right, and you mentioned that, and I think that we've seen throughout the state with local elected officials serving on regional planning organizations up through the Minnesota Association of Development Organizations, MADO, that they are, because we haven't elected the right people in local government, we still see those same terms: equitable housing, affordable housing, having transportation choices, all of that kind of stuff we see even out in greater Minnesota. And to have mixed-use development up in Meeker County might not make sense. And so...
Right.
Yeah, it's the cookie cutter effect. You and I did an entire show, Jason, on Roseau's comp plan. You could have crossed out Roseau and put Plymouth on it. and it was pretty much the same terms all around. It was pretty bad. I mean, it's regional government, something that needs a whole lot. And, Jeff, you touched on school districts. I'm totally with you. I mean, they're trying to make every school district the same. We all know there's no two that are alike. I mean, it's chaos.
Yep. No, that is so true, and that it kind of blends in with another issue that I talk about all the time, and kind of goes back to that very theme that I'm running on, and that is this attitude in government, especially amongst government agencies at the state level, that their job, their primary job, is to help people make better decisions about their own communities or their own lives, and to direct people and to control people, and in many cases to punish people that don't do what they're supposed to. And that is not the job of government, and it is not the job of agencies. And that will be a major focus of mine, is to change that attitude from controlling and directing to actually serving the people who pay our salaries. That is a huge culture change, and we are a long ways from it. But if you appoint the right leaders in each of these agencies and tell them, I've got your back, now go to town and start getting rid of the people who are unwilling to serve people and just want to control them, you can change it. It might take a while, but it has to change. When I look at the DNR or the PCA or the Department of Commerce, they have little interest in serving the people who pay their salaries, and great interest in controlling them and helping them make better decisions about their own lives. And that is so far from what government is supposed to do that it should make your head spin.
Well, then,
so that'll be a big focus.
Then I want you to know I am very available for an appointment to head up one of those things. I just want you to know that.
I'd love to chair up the Met Council. I would do the least of anybody that has ever been on the Met Council. Yeah.
Yes, and as a fisherman, I totally agree with the DNR. The book you get when you get a fishing license, I mean, is pretty thorough.
Yeah.
I fished up at Big Sandy Lake in McGregor a few years ago, and it was like, okay, what fish can I catch here? I get that there needs to be some sort of protection of our resources.
Yep.
I'm okay with that, but I mean, when I catch a fish and I got to grab a book and look in it and measure the fins this way or whatever it is, I mean, that's when the fun's taken out of it.
Absolutely.
I mean,
And we do need to, obviously we do need to protect our natural resources. It's something that makes us unique. But the DNR needs to understand that the sportsmen and sportswomen who, that's part as a way of life for them, need to be part of that decision making. Because right now, the biggest complaint I get from sportsmen and women is that DNR makes all these decisions, some of them kind of extreme, and they never get any input whatsoever from the people who are actually enjoying the natural resources. And that, again, that goes to, our job is to tell you what to do. And that it has to end.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I mean, we are a state that values the outdoors, and I don't know if it's because we get so little time to actually enjoy it when it's nice or whatever, but that kind of goes to another topic that there's a lot of legislation that affects cities, and I don't know if you can speak to a little bit. I know we're getting close to the time you got to get running, but there's some legislation that really it has a lot of downward pressure on cities, and I don't know. We've seen the Republicans not be able to really coalesce around a lot of stuff, and I don't know how we're going to do that. Two, we've seen these special interest groups, when they can't get the legislation passed, go around, circumvent the legislature to go to the cities. Things like Green Step Minnesota, things like Tobacco 21, groups like that. And with groups like the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. When we're talking about something like Green Step Minnesota that can be controlled from the state government, what are some things that you see yourself being able to do? Because Green Step really is cap and trade at a local level, and I know that we have some other things sitting in state statute really that need to be revisited. If you have anything on the top of your head. Yeah.
Well, so I mean that goes to that big issue which was in the middle of the legislature this year of can and should the state require cities to be uniform in certain things. So the three issues that came up were minimum wage, benefits required for employees like paid leave, and then plastic bags for some bizarre reason. And I don't get that. And what frustrates me is where they ended up. They kind of gave up on the minimum wage and said do whatever you want, but they banned banning plastic bags, which to me, if a city wants to do something stupid like banning plastic bags, they have every right to do that. There are going to be consequences, but I don't think the state should say you can't. I think the minimum wage is very different, because if we have a patchwork of minimum wages around the state, I think it greatly affects the state economy. And a patchwork of plastic bag laws really doesn't make a bit of difference to most people other than grocers, and your groceries are going to be a little more expensive. So, I mean, it goes to that, and I mean, when you say are there things you can do about some of these organizations that are getting the patchwork legislation on smoking or cap and trade or whatever it is, I generally shy away from the state government saying we're going to tell you what you can and can't do as a city, even if we think it's really stupid. Unless you can show that if they do it, it is going to have a truly significant negative effect on the overall economy of the state, as minimum wage differences, I think, will, because they're going to happen eventually. And so that's kind of where I come down on that. So a lot of those things I probably would say, I'm not going to get involved in that as governor, and I don't think the state should. And it comes down to electing the right people at the local level, and then they'll have to pay the consequences if they elect bad people.
Right, but like with Green Step, where it does come from a state organization, part of the administration, if you will, of state government. Like with Green Step, would that be something that you would want to address, just because they're facilitating that? It's one thing for a city to pass something on its own, like, hey, we want solar panels, versus,
right,
hey, you can belong to this club, and here are the steps to become green, and if you follow those, we'll recognize you, whatever.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there entirely. I don't think that is, it's essentially not all that different from passing legislation it maybe doesn't mandate anything, but what we do is we take taxpayer dollars and reward cities or other localities from doing something that they wouldn't have chosen to do otherwise. So to me, that is, that's at least that's akin to a mandate, because you're taking people's money and trying to change their behavior based on that. So
yeah, I've always said,
I definitely agree with you there.
There's no such thing as voluntary in government. It's do it or there's consequences. All right. Well, Jeff,
that's right.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Why don't you tell us where we can find you on the web, or things like that, where we can send questions to you. Anything exciting coming up you're going to be at? Let us know that. Wrap it up.
Great.
Give us your sales pitch here.
Yeah, well, johnsonforgovernor.org, www.johnsonforgovernor.org is the website. That's got everything you need to know on it, including a way to get a hold of me. And I do actually see the emails that are sent. Sometimes it's a week or two later, but I get them. And so if people do have questions, or if they have thoughts or ideas, please send them. That's also how you can sign up to volunteer, or if you're not willing to go that far, just sign up for our email updates, and we will keep you informed. I've got a ton of events coming up. Many of them are listed on the website. Some of them are meet and greets where you just come out and say hi. Others of them are small dollar fundraisers. I know there's one in Excelsior next week. We got one in Plymouth the week after that, one way up in Detroit Lakes the week after that. So there's a lot going on, and we've got a ton of forums and debates coming up too over the next few months. When I say this campaign has started off faster than the last one, that's a perfect example. We've already had 6 or 8 candidate debates, and I think we've got 10 or 12 more scheduled before the end of the year. So it's moving fast, which is a good sign.
And I assume people can donate to you right on your website.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They can, and
got to mention that.
Actually, that's been one of my focuses, and will be through the end of the year, is raising money and trying to post a good number, and that's going well. But we love help, whether it's $10 or $1,000. We will carefully put it to good use, I promise.
All right. Well, thanks, Jeff, for joining us. Good luck to you. And
thank you, guys.
Yes, come back and see us. You're welcome anytime.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Jeff. Well, Andrew, that was a great interview.
Finally, we've had a guest bigger than me on this show. I just wanted a bigger deal than me, and I have to admit, Jeff's a bigger deal than me.
I think we've had some fine guests.
Yeah, we've had terrific guests. In fact, we get a lot of compliments on the shows where we do have guests, and we do want to tell the audience we are planning to have more, but it's not going to overtake the show. We're not going to have guests every time. It's going to be more of a special treat for everybody out there.
That's just because at the local level, there's still so much information to digest. I mean, keep in mind, it took us 10 years, almost 9 years currently, to get to where we're at knowledge-wise. And our goal really is to lay all of this on you and to be able to help you to understand and get to our level of understanding.
And
where
cut
we're
that
at.
down.
Yeah.
We don't want you to take 9 years to get to where we are. That's the last thing on earth. We wanted you to take it 2 years, 1 year.
Right. So part of that is going to be us laying that knowledge on you. Part of that is going to be us instructing you how to get out there and make a difference. And part of it is going to be learning from people who did it, just like Jeff Johnson, just like Jim Adams, just like Gina Bauman, who have been doing it. So we want to make sure that all of those avenues are available, because I think variety is the spice of life, really, and that and cumin, I guess.
Yeah, and you're talking. I haven't done anything different for the last 30 years, but yeah, I agree. Variety is.
It's like fishing Lake Vermilion instead of Mille Lacs all the time. It's a good change up.
I still watch the '87 Twins. So, like I said, nothing's.
Oh boy!
It's great to watch baseball. I'm off the subject, but it's great to watch baseball. And I didn't hear the word pitch count. I didn't, or words, I should say. I didn't see 14 strikeouts in the game. I saw a bunt in the game. I saw a hit and run. I mean, baseball's the greatest sport on earth. But the way it's played now, I am nostalgic. I do look back, so that's why I don't do anything different. But you're still right. Variety is the spice of life, or whatever you said. You know,
that is what I said.
Is that what you said?
That is
See,
what
my
I
short-term memory's still good.
Well, that's a lot of stuff for one day. You got some local stuff from us. You got some local stuff from Jeff, plus some Hennepin County statewide stuff. So I think that your brain's probably full. I know I feel like mine is empty now that I've got all that out. Or maybe that's just normal. At any rate, Andrew, anything else before we shut this down?
No, I agree. I flushed my brain, too. It's gone.
That's it. Sorry, folks. That's all you get. So, you got questions. You got things you want to know about. You got things your city or county or school is doing that you want us to write about. I would be more than happy to take your emails at commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That's commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. And then we'll try to get them into a podcast, or we'll put them up on our blog at commsolutionsmn.com. And please, if you like what you hear from us, if you like what you read from us, hit that share button. Get the word out there. Get people educated. I mean, that is kind of your service to your community. You know, we provide a service in providing the information, and then you can provide a service to your community in supplying that information, especially if we're writing about your city, if we're, you know, but even if it's about another city, those things go on across the board, as you've heard from us all the time. So please, the more our words get out there, the more educated Minnesota becomes. The more educated Minnesota becomes, the easier it's going to be to put good people into local office. And then once you heard Jeff speak about having a bench, a farm team, once you get a farm team of good people at the local level, then you can start to see things happen at the state level. Then you can start to see things happen at the federal level. But it's a process, and we got to start at the bottom. So all that said, we love you, Minnesota. Now it's time for you to get to work.
If I get too caught up